What's going on YouTube? We're going to answer a question that came in on YouTube, and it was about the difference between dry fire and live fire performance. How do you connect the two? How do you separate the two? I think that's what I'm reading. I'll read the question. Great video. Okay. I agree with everything you said. Okay, great. I'd like to hear about your perspective on dry fire performance versus actual performance. Okay. So I guess what I'm seeing, what I'm reading here is possibly what you're doing in dry fire is not transferred to your live fire. Cool. That's very normal for people that don't dry fire the right things, or potentially haven't unlocked this is what actually matters in dry fire, right? I know it's been talked about before, but I've been hitting a mental block in matches lately, and it's been hurting my performance. Thanks so much in advance. So for me, when I read something like that, I'm thinking that potentially what you're focused on in dry fire is not the right things, and or you're not being super honest with what you're seeing and perceiving in dry fire. Okay, things that matter in dry fire: how you hold the pistol. First of all, the structure around your grip, the pressures around your grip need to be exactly the same as when you're live firing. Unfortunately, too many people have a dry fire grip and then they have a live fire grip. Even worse, they have a live fire grip for when they shoot fast, big air quotes, and they have a live fire grip for when they're shooting accurate or marksmanship or whatever they want to call it. There's one grip, guys. If you're not practicing that same grip that you can shoot a bill drill or 25-yard headshots at the range, if you're not practicing that grip at home in dry fire, you're doing yourself a massive disservice and you're missing out on a bunch of learning. You're actually getting potentially worse because you're not practicing correctly. It is possible to get worse and get really good at sucking at something by practicing it incorrectly, because practice will make permanent whatever it is that you do most of. So you want to be practicing on purpose, very diligently on a specific thing, knowing why and how you're doing it and what you're paying attention to, so that it can effectively change your live fire for the better. The whole reason I have a dry fire program online is because when I got serious about shooting, I was already competing some. And I mean like real serious, like training a bunch. I was like, man, I have every dry fire book on planet Earth. Everybody that's ever written one that's decent, like I have it, I own it, I do the drills from it, and I can see some progress in maybe my gun manipulations or whatever. But then when I go to the range and I actually go shoot, I'm not connecting the dots. And then once I started to figure out that I wasn't paying attention to the right things in dry fire and I was just doing drills just to do drills, that's when I changed for me and I started seeing some exponential progress. I was like, dude, I got to share with people. So in the dry fire program, while I'm doing the drills, while we're talking about the different stuff, I'm giving you specifically what I'm paying attention to, specifically why we're doing an exercise and what it's trying to improve. And then when it goes wrong, I tell, hey man, I did that wrong. This is what I saw. This is what I felt. Or hey, this one worked out really, really great. This is what I saw. This is what I felt. This is what I was going to focus on. When I make a mistake, I point you to the solution, right? Like even when I make a mistake, I don't cut stuff out of the dry fire videos. I go, hey man, I made a mistake here. I need to focus on this specific thing on the next one. So now you're paying attention, not just like, oh, I have an L prez, I have 3 targets, I have 10 yards. I'm going to turn, draw, do 6, reload 6. And that's like, you just do that and you do that and you do that and you do that, but you're not making any progress because you're not paying attention to the right things. You might be sliding the gun around all 3 targets and go, yeah, I made the time. Just making a part-time isn't it. Now, can you in dry fire, should you in dry fire find new limits in performance by shortening the part-time, pressing, so that you're essentially moving your hands as fast as you possibly can. Your gun manipulations are very, very aggressive. You're potentially putting pressure on yourself to get something done in a shorter and shorter amount of time. Yes, I think that's where you're essentially driving 250 miles an hour, like as a NASCAR driver, trying not to put the car into the wall, so that when you go to match day or race day, whatever they call it, you can drive your 210 or whatever they drive. I have no idea what those guys drive. I don't really watch NASCAR, but I am for sure, as a performer, you're going to want to go beyond what you need on match day, as much as is physically possible. So yes, there are opportunities in dry fire where you're going beyond what you currently have to find new limits of performance or new edges of performance, because it's ever expanding. But you have to be realistic with yourself. Let's say, for example, I have it set up here. I have my basket to receive my magazine. I have a 10-yard, probably 12 yards simulated targets, and they're kind of close to each other. You can see them here on the wall, just like kind of like a turn and draw L prez would be or whatever. You can say, yep, got it done. Shoot the first shot in point 0.8 and like you're done with your first 3 targets in 1.6 and you make it 3.5 or something like that. You can say that. And you can maybe even actually physically do the motions to make it. Like you turn, you sweep across 3 targets, you reload, you sweep across 3 targets, and you maybe make the 3.5. That does not mean that you have a 3.5 LPRES. In fact, it probably doesn't even mean you have a 4.5 or a 5 LPRES. Because if you didn't focus on actually pausing your eyes on each one of these particular targets with like actual focal depth change, like my eyes are actually looking here and not somewhere in the middle, definitely not on the gun. My eyes are actually picking a spot on each one of these things, and I am paying attention that I am doing that, even though I'm not going to pause it for very long. There's no gun going off, all that stuff, right? I get it. Your dry fire time should be a little bit quicker because there isn't as much going on. The gun's not going off. But if I am on purpose looking to pause my eyes, looking at the mag, I'm not trying to get like the heroic reload. I'm going to get some failure at reloads right in dry fire because I'm trying to do it as efficiently as possible. But I am not trying to be superhero and try to make a 3.5 and then call myself good or call myself making progress. I am making progress when I have consistency in the what I'm working on. I'm going to be consistent in snapping my eyes on the turn to make sure that I'm picking a spot on the target. I allow the gun to get right at the first target. I am going to be focusing on maybe trigger break at speed on that first target so that I know that my grip is set correctly, that I can smash on the trigger and still get a good successful hit. So now I've already given you 2 like cheat codes, whatever you want to call them, 2 things you should be focused on in dry fire, which is prioritizing the eyes, finding the target, not prioritizing the feet movement, who cares, right? Prioritize the eyes, your feet will get there, okay? Prioritizing the trigger break at speed to make sure that the grip pressures and structures are correct. Then actually pausing your eyes on each one of those spots, even though the gun's not going off, to make sure that you have spots, you're ingraining the habit of finding a small spot on each target every time you go to shoot it. That doesn't mean you have to linger there forever, but there's some kind of pause. Even if it's a 15 split, like your gun needs to be paused for a 15th in that spot while the gun's going off. You can't just peel your gun across 3 targets and call it good, but that's the habits you build when somebody tells you, hey man, just go faster in dry fire. Okay. My opinion is yes, you should reduce the part time so they become a little bit unrealistic to the point where you're finding some failure rate. But if your failure rate is 50 and 60% when you're honest, then that's too much. If your failure rate is a quarter of the time, when you're being honest, again, I'm being honest. I'm pausing my eyes and bringing the gun to each one of those spots. I'm not sliding across targets. I'm actually doing the thing I'm supposed to be doing. And you have 25% failure rate. That's probably the practice time that you should be in. But if you're failing half the time, or even worse, what I really see is most people are failing some and also not paying attention to the right things anyway. So you're failing some of the times, and that's not even including like realistic, like I'm picking a spot, I am reinforcing the right parts of the process. Right, so picking all the spots, actually looking to the magazine, prioritizing how your hand removes from the gun and snatches the magazine out of the magazine pouch, actually having a good specific part on your hand where you want the magazine pad to touch your hand. Like all of those cues are very, very important. In something like LPRES, there are so many skills in there that make the drill right. But if you're not specifically focusing on those things, you're not going to get them live on the range when the gun is also going off. And there's people watching and you're trying to win, right? That you have all this extra pressure, but you've done very mediocre or less practice in the dry fire space, that of course you're not going to get the results in the live fire space, because now you're hoping to get your home run from home. You're trying to get that superhero run, but that superhero run didn't have good sights, didn't pick good spots on the targets, didn't prioritize the grip pressure and grip structures, didn't prioritize like getting the magazine out of the pouch correctly. Right? So when you're missing all those things for the sake of beating a part time, then you're definitely not going to have it under pressure at the range at a match. So focusing on the correct things is very, very important. Then once you've got those things kind of figured out, like I am focusing on these things, and then I'm going to remove some of the part time to make it so that I'm constantly uncomfortable, that's a good place to train. And I think if you train that way very purposefully, like we do in the dry fire program, again, if you're not in the dry fire program, I can't think of a better way for like, I don't know, cents on a day, like spend 50, 60 cents a day to be on the dry fire program. Just do it, right? If you want to get good and you're serious, just do it. Get on there, go to the website, myown defender.com, click at the top, dry fire program, get on it. Even if you do it for a month, Start at the beginning. I think it'll change you if you actually are willing to do work. Now, if you're not willing to do work and you're a peasant, please don't sign up. You're going to waste your time. You're going to waste my time. But if you're actually about the work and you're actually about getting better, go sign up, help yourself, treat yourself. You'll find much help in that program because it's like sequential. It's kind of in order. You go to the beginning and it's going to set you up for success. So if you're practicing that way, if your Dryfire sessions are that way, very on purpose, focusing on specific things, I am focusing to make sure my grip is like my Dryfire grip. Maybe you're doing some movement, right? Dryfire needs to include some of the things that you're being challenged at the matches. If you want your Dryfire performance to match your Dryfire performance, or if you want your Dryfire really better, if you want your Dryfire performance to increase so that your Dryfire performance increases, that's the way I work it, right? If my Dryfire performance gets better and better and better, I'm paying attention to the right things, I'm shortening up the par times, I'm getting a lot of consistency, then my Dryfire will also increase. But if I'm not paying attention to the specific things, I'm not paying attention to the right things, then this is just going to be super inconsistent. And I'm going to have a false sense of security potentially from having practiced something that wasn't practiced correctly. So yes, find new levels of performance. Yes, decrease your par times. But most importantly, when you do a drill, whatever the drill might be, I don't care if it's track the A zone, paint the steel, accelerator, designated target, I don't know, turn and draws, whatever the heck you're working on, make sure that you are paying attention to specific things like the ones I mentioned, so that when you go to the Dryfire, that same drill, and you're checking on your progress, you actually have skills to support the result. Instead of like, well, I threw my gun around a bunch and I got it done in 3.5 seconds. Yeah, your reloads are like, this is your transitions. Like I'll let people turn around and they're like, yeah, it was good, very good. I made the time. Like, what, dude, what are you doing? You're like literally just jamming the gun around, didn't pause on anything, didn't have any process that was like particular, on purpose, meaningful. You just, whatever, you're kind of wasting your time. So if you're finding that your Dryfire performance is not being affected positively by your Dryfire needs improvement in quality and attention. You have to be honest with what you're seeing, and you have to practice on purpose the skills, the components of each drill that make you a better shooter, like the ones that we mentioned just today. And those are just a few things that I pay attention to while I'm Dryfire. If you're not paying attention to those things, and you're just like, oh yeah, I just waved, I did the thing, but then your grip is super soft, or your grip is inconsistent, or your reloads are inconsistent, where you grab the magazine is inconsistent, how you look at targets, maybe you have a little bit of a medium focus, not on the gun, but not on the target. You're kind of loosely looking at all three instead of a small spot on each one of those targets. If that's how you train, that's what you're going to get at the match, at best. Or worse, it'll be even worse than what you practice at home. So that's where the discrepancy between Dryfire and Dryfire happens. I hope you find that helpful. Again, there's no silver bullet. You have to practice at home in Dryfire, but you also have to practice meaningfully, purposefully, so you know what skill you're improving. And a lot of the times, micro drills, small drills, where you're like one single mind on that thing. I'm only focusing on how my hand arrives. If you're doing like above the shoulder starts, I am focusing on how the hand arrives on the gun so that I can have good structure. And then I'm focusing on how to lift the gun with both hands so I can have good pressure. Like that might be the thing that you do for a little while until that becomes normal. Then you add the pause on each target. Maybe you then need to you can add some like metronome type of transitions so that you can move your eyes, like force your eyes to move at the speed of a metronome. You don't have to have a gun for that. You can add a gun after that, right? Because it's distracting to add the gun on there. So I hope you find it helpful. If you've got questions, make sure that you put them on this video. I'd love to answer more questions like this. And of course, you got to comment, like, subscribe, and hit that bell so that when a new video comes out, you can see it. You know what to do. Get after it.